Welcome to Massive Passive Cash Flow, the podcast that guides professionals to financial prosperity. Join our community and let's start building your wealth. Here's your host, Gary Wilson.
Hello, this is Gary Wilson, and welcome to the Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast. Glad to have you back. If you haven't already done so, if you could please subscribe to the podcast. Of course, you're listening to it, so you know it's on Stitcher, iTunes, iHeartRadio, 30 different channels, all right? And if you haven't been to the website, please go to the website, realestatewithgarywilson.com. It's an education-based website, but more importantly, you can access all the investor agents we have all over the country, currently in 27 states. These are agents who are trained to work with you. I know that because we train them. I'm an investor too, right? So go scope it out, check it out. And right now you can get in for free for 30 days and grab all this stuff you can grab. Over 300 recordings, 6 training programs, 7 books, several dozen websites you can use for research. Just treat it like it's Christmas time and grab all you can get, okay? Now, speaking of investor agents and agents who are trained to work with you, we've got a great guest today, Jeff Copeland from Copeland Morgan, LLC. And we're just talking about Tampa, Florida, where he operates. And Jeff also has 15 agents at the ready for you to serve you. And he also offers property management, which is a big deal. If you can keep your purchases and your management under one roof, you're going to be better off. I'm telling you, because I used to do the same exact thing, all right? Instead of putting things in different companies, cohesive management is critical to your success. So Jeff, welcome aboard, man. I'm glad to have you.
Thanks, Gary. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'll tell you what, I know I'm lucky to have you because I know you're successful. We've already spoken. I've read your bio information, so it's a privilege to have you. I know you're a busy guy. But what I want to do is, before we get into what I call the meat and potatoes, could you capture people's attention just by telling a little bit about you, how you got to where you are, and then the context will make everything else make a lot more sense,
Yeah, happy to. Well, as you said, my name is Jeff Copeland. I'm an independent broker. I'm a broker owner of Copeland Morgan, LLC. I'm a real estate investor. I'm a property manager. I'm a real estate broker, and I have 15 agents working under me here in the Tampa Bay area. Our office is located in St. Petersburg, but we cover the Tampa Bay area, Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater, and most of the surrounding cities and counties. I got into real estate like most people, maybe, 8 or 10 years ago. I decided I wanted to start flipping houses. And it's a lot of fun. I still love it. It's a passion of mine, but it doesn't take long to realize that one, flipping houses is hard work. You're doing, 12 hours a day and you're under the clock, you're under the gun to get that flip finished and back on the market and sold. And two, when you're really successful, you have a really big tax bill. And so, what tends to happen to a lot of people eventually is you say, you know what, maybe I'll just keep this property and rent it out. And then you become a landlord. And so in parallel to that, I got my real estate license to help with my own investing, but I sort of realized that I really like helping other people acquire properties and meet their real estate goals as well, which led to, hey, well, will you manage this property for us? And of course, I never say no. Sure. And so, that has led to me owning a brokerage with, 15 agents and managing 300 units all around the Tampa Bay area. And so that's kind of, my real estate history in a nutshell. Prior to real estate, I was in the military. I'm a Coast Guard veteran, and we lived in Florida, California, Hawaii, and then we came back here after I left active duty in 2006. And that's where we kind of got into real estate.
Nice. Well, I love your background. By the way, I've got to ask you, if you're a former Coastie, did you go up to Newport, Rhode Island for the training there, for the academy?
I have been there once. I think they do the firefighting training there. So yeah, I did go there for the, I think they call it the SS Buttercup. You learn how to put out fires and stuff on a naval vessel. Yeah, that was fun.
And one of my best friends is he's a retired Coastie. He was up in Portland, Maine, and same thing, went to Hawaii. I mean, just you guys are awesome, by the way. So I didn't realize that about you till now. And thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, now, so what's interesting is you're operating out of the Tampa area, and I know it's sort of common knowledge. Anybody that's been paying attention realizes Florida has been really hot. I don't mean temperature hot. I mean as far as the market goes, for quite a while. I mean, since I was in college, everybody's like, I'm going to Florida. in the last generation, it increased more. In the last couple of years, it's even more. The migration of people to Florida, the migration of money has been phenomenal. So when we talk about the rental properties, and I start off with little properties, flipping homes, and I'd keep a couple for rentals. And I realized when I sell the property, I make a profit, but I only get paid once. And I shot the goose laying the golden egg. And I thought, I'm going to put more emphasis on the rentals. And thank goodness I did, because the clock keeps ticking. Now it's been a couple of decades, and I currently have no debt. And it's the rentals, the buy and hold, that made me wealthy. It wasn't the flipping was fun. I made money on it, but it was like a job, because if you don't flip, you don't make money. Well, with rentals, you and I could go to Hawaii. We can go to Greece. We can go wherever we want, and we're still making money. So if you wouldn't mind, would you mind delving a little bit into what types of properties you like? Like, what are you seeing right now in the Tampa St. Pete area? I mean, is it 5 units? Is it 20 units? Is it, short-term, long-term? Kind of give us a little bit of what would we expect if we're coming down there to invest in the Tampa St. Pete area?
Yeah, well, I would say that the niche that we serve is your sort of intermediate level investor who's looking for the small to medium multifamily property that 3 to 4 units. Yeah, that's a great way to get started. But the 5 to 15 or 5 to 20 unit space, I have found is kind of a sweet spot, because you're flying a little bit above the mom and pop investors, but you're flying a little bit below the big institutional money and the syndications. And so that we have just found that to be our niche. Now, of course, we manage some and sell some single family homes from time to time. We have plenty of investors who have duplexes, triplexes. And in fact, many of those investors started out with duplexes, triplexes, and they've built their portfolio up into some larger 10, 15, 20 unit complexes. And so, yeah, that's definitely, sort of our sweet spot.
Yeah. Well, I agree with 100%. And where you are, it's interesting. If you really look at, Tampa's, of course, on one side, then on the other side, you got St. Pete, Clearwater, Treasure Island, Dunedin, and all these other smaller areas. What I found is there's actually better deals over there. Up with, St. Pete up into Clearwater, all in there. Some of those areas, I mean, the price per square foot and the ratio of price versus rents is very favorable. It doesn't mean it's easy, because of course it's competitive. You've got to go in there and swing the bat like everybody else and throw your punches to get some deals. But is that just my imagination, or I love Tampa. Believe me, I'm going to be there teaching your class here in another month or so. But it seems like Tampa is just higher density population, and therefore it attracts more businesses, therefore it attracts more people. I don't have all the answers. I probably have more questions, but
yeah, well, you actually bring up a really interesting point about Tampa or Hillsborough County, where Tampa is located, versus Pinellas County, where you have St. Pete, Clearwater, and we actually have 24 different municipalities in Pinellas County. A lot of people don't realize this, but Pinellas is like the second most densely populated county on the eastern seaboard, behind Manhattan. Wow. And what that means is, yes, of course, there are a lot of housing units. There's a lot of inventory. That doesn't mean there's a lot of inventory for sale, but it just means that's where the density of housing is in Pinellas County. You've got St. Pete, Clearwater. You mentioned Treasure Island, Madeira Beach, Reddington Beach, Reddington Shores, Seminole, Largo. There's 24 different cities. That presents some challenges of its own, especially if you get into like short-term rental laws and stuff like that, because every city has their own rules and regulations. Across the bridge in Hillsborough County, you really only have 3 cities. That's Tampa, Temple Terrace, and Plant City. And then the rest, which is a really big county, is all unincorporated Hillsborough County. The interesting thing about Hillsborough is there's still a lot of vacant land. There's a lot of tract development, a lot of spec homes being built. Whereas on this side of the bridge in Pinellas County, it's really lot by lot. If somebody finds a 50 by 100 piece of dirt, they're snapping it up and buying a single family home, because there are no tracts of land left in Pinellas County.
Yeah, you've got to head south and go down around like Apollo Beach and down towards Sarasota and south of Bradenton, Venice Beach and all that. And of course, Inglewood, we talked about that earlier. Of course, that's getting gobbled up, and that's an hour plus south of Tampa, St. Pete. And I probably shouldn't be talking about it, because that's one of my favorite areas, and I want it all for myself. Yeah.
Don't give them all your secrets, Gary.
There you go, man. Yeah, but I tell you what, you head down there, there's more land, but it's that's being gobbled up. It's just amazing.
Well, the trends over the last 20 years have been really fascinating to watch. I first moved to St. Petersburg in about 1996. And back then, we used to joke that it's heaven's waiting room. We used to attract retirees from the Northeast and the Midwest. And frankly, there was a lot of older people, retirees in Florida, because there's no state income tax. Over the last 20 years or so, those trends have really, really changed, especially in sort of the urban cores like Tampa and St. Pete. We've attracted a lot of younger people and artists and just, a really vibrant sort of downtown arts and club and bar and restaurant scene. And so seeing that transition over the last 20, 25 years has been fascinating. And I have to say, COVID and everything that happened in response to COVID has only added fuel to that fire, because if you can work from home now, which so many people do, that means you no longer have to shovel snow in Chicago. You no longer have to pay for a flat in Midtown Manhattan. You can work from the beach in Florida, and it's 90 degrees out here today. And so what that has done is it's driven a lot of those workforce type folks, tenants, to Florida. And we're seeing, record population growth and people and money just kind of flowing towards Florida. We were talking about that earlier with, howmoneymoves.com tracking, where the money flows. And that kind of goes along with the people. And then, of course, the investor money follows them. And so, yeah, there are a lot of people interested in Florida. And when you start looking around Florida, you ultimately, will certainly end up considering the Tampa Bay area as a strong, investment real estate market. Yeah,
I agree. Hey, by the way, I was sometimes I will go up and stay. I have several million points with Marriott. So instead of staying at a home down in Inglewood, I'll come up to Clearwater, St. Pete, Treasure Island. One of my favorite areas is the Treasure Island area. There's a great waterfront Marriott there. I think it's Residence Inn.
I know the place.
Everywhere. Yep. And down about maybe 15-minute walk, there is a little beachfront, waterfront bar, grill, just kind of little fun area called Caddies. And so we like to go there, and people will come there from the city of Petersburg, St. Pete. And that city turns out is like the number 1 or number 2 dog friendly town in the country. So people will come in, bringing their puppy dogs in everywhere. It's a lot of fun, especially if you like dogs, but they are attracting. It's a younger crowd. I mean, it's just amazing how it's grown. So let me ask you this. One of the things that we've been looking at in our own portfolio is diverting some of our holdings to be used for what we call corporate housing and short-term. So short-term could be like your Airbnbs. Now, some areas, they like it, some areas they don't, different zoning laws and things like that. But corporate housing, that's your short-term executive coming in for 6 months, or the film crew coming to make a movie and they need it for 6 months, or a traveling nurse for 9 months. And we're actually finding we're getting a lot more income per unit. You're not cleaning the place out every week. They stay for, again, 6 months. You furnish it, of course. But it's just them. They're not coming with their children and dogs, So are you seeing any of that developing in the area there? Have you heard about it or doing it yourself? I mean, really, I'm looking at kind of both answers for both the Airbnb style places and the what I call corporate housing. That's what the industry calls it. I don't really call it corporate. That's
a great question. It's a question that we get some version of, all the time here in Florida. Should we do long-term rentals? Should we do vacation rentals? Should we do Airbnb? Should we do seasonal, snowbird type rentals? And if you don't know what a snowbird is, everybody, all the retirees in Canada and in the Northeast and the Midwest tend to come down to Florida for the wintertime because it's 80 degrees here when it's negative 80 degrees up there. And many of them, some of them have second homes, but many of them will come down and pay for a rental for 3-4 months or whatever. So to go back to your question, though, I mentioned earlier in Pinellas County, which is St. Pete, Clearwater, we have 24 different municipalities. What that results in is a really confusing matrix of different rental laws and regulations for the different municipalities. And then even within the municipality, It depends on the zoning. I have a property that we manage on St. Pete Beach where, it's steps from the beach and you would think this is a nightly rental, but the zoning only allows 30-day or 30 nights minimum rental, whereas the property across the street is literally like a hotel. So, it's a complicated web of laws, regulations, and also zoning. I'll send you a link. You can put it in the show notes. The Pinellas Realtor Organization actually put together a really great page that lists each of the different municipalities in both Pinellas and Hillsborough counties, and it shows you the point of contact and a really quick recap of the short-term rental regulations for that municipality. It's a really good resource, and thankfully they maintain it, so it's not something that we have to keep up on because they do change from time to time. Yeah. But what we find down here is we mainly manage long-term rentals. So that's, I don't want to be biased towards that, but a lot of people do certainly entertain vacation rentals and seasonal rentals down here. And, you mentioned sort of the corporate housing or traveling nurse or whatever model. That's very similar to the seasonal rental market that we have here in Florida, where your folks who are coming down to Florida for the summer, many of them will come, for example, if they're Canadian, they might not have a US, credit score or credit history or whatever. So they will literally come down and stroke a check for 4 or 5 months worth of premium rental rates for the winter. And they'll pay in advance. And so that can be a great way to maximize your returns during those months. Of course, what that leaves you is with 6 or 8 months out of the year where your property is not rented annually, but you don't want to maybe rent it for the next winter because you have more seasonal tenants coming. And so you have to find some creative solutions to keep the occupancy up during the off season, so to speak, which ironically is the summer here. And so, there's lots of different ways you can make money with rental properties, and finding the right combination is definitely key. Now, I'll also add that there's always something to be said for long-term rentals because it's so stable. The turnover costs, we do it once every year or two as opposed to once every week or two. So you can imagine the cleaning costs, the maintenance, the upkeep, and things like that. When you factor that in along with, you can assume a short-term rental is going to run at maybe 80% occupancy. That's pretty good. Hey, we're rented 80% of the year. Most people would be happy with that. And then most people are going to pay a much heftier management fee of 20%, give or take for short-term rental management. And so when you crunch out those numbers, there's certainly a higher ceiling with short-term or Airbnb vacation rentals. But, when you factor in the higher management fees and the higher, logistical costs of operating that unit, sometimes the delta is not quite as, the difference isn't quite as wide as you might think at first glance. So I encourage people to factor that in and crunch the numbers and do what makes the most sense for the property, given the location, the municipality, and the zoning. Yeah,
I agree 100%. I know over the years, now, granted, my background was technical. I had a degree in computer science. I was in IT and banking. Ended up doing mergers and acquisitions. As you might imagine, we're analyzing other banks, performance statements, balance sheets, profit, loss, income, expense, and all that. So I think I brought that skill to the business of investing in real estate. And there's lots of tools out there. But so if I could kind of talk about that a little bit, when it comes to actually identifying the properties. It's identification, it's analysis, and then of course you still have to negotiate. It's not like a lot of people think, hey, all you do is negotiate for me. Well, that's not true. We do a lot of other legwork. By the time we get to negotiating, we've already worked 90% of this thing on research. So what do you have any a favorite method you use for property identification? Or I know we don't have a lot of detail, a lot of time for details, but as much as you can share, because I found everybody has their own style, like your own magic formula that you develop over the years. And anything you can share along those lines because I think people, when they hear sort of what you're doing and your success, they don't have the bandwidth to do what you do, but they will certainly want to work with you and benefit from what you're doing. And of course, then it's win-win for everybody. But any favorite methods or techniques or strategies or tools you can think of that we can share on a podcast?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And I want to go back to something you said about the role of your real estate agent or the role of your real estate broker in helping you find, analyze, and acquire deals. I think a lot of new, rookie investors have the idea that we just send out the deals. We have the secret stash of inventory. Or, I get so many people that contact me and say, hey, I have some money, or I have a group of people who have some money and we want to buy some property. So send me all of your best deals. Yeah, that's not exactly how it works. And that's also not where I add value, because to a very, very large extent, we're all looking at the same inventory of properties that are available for sale at any given time. And I really feel like where our expertise comes in is in the analysis and the negotiating, like you mentioned. And I feel like if your agent or broker isn't, saving you as much through analysis and negotiation and et cetera, as they're earning in commission, that's where we add our value. And so if you understand that value, that the commission becomes a non-factor, because sometimes the deals you avoid save you years of heartache and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And sometimes the deals you negotiate because of our experience and strategies that we employ to acquire these properties, save the buyer, that we're representing, far more than we would ever hope to earn in commission. And so I like to think of us in terms of adding value. To your point about analysis of the properties, absolutely. I joke that I'm on a mission to cure analysis paralysis, because I see so many people just kind of get stuck. Well, I don't know if it's a good deal or not. I don't know if I should pull the trigger or not. Or they even get a property under contract and they get into due diligence and then they get stuck. They're like, well, I just don't know. I don't know if I should move forward with this deal. In the meantime, you and I are sitting there saying, it's a great deal. It's exactly what you asked for. Don't let this one get away. Oh, yeah. But there's this fear. And many times they walk away from what would otherwise be a great deal. And 2 points there. One, there is always a cost to doing nothing. So don't fool yourself into thinking that because you did nothing and you didn't move forward with that property, that's not going to cost you anything. It's an opportunity cost, because if you owned that property 20, 30 years from now, you'd be passing on generational wealth, to your family, along with all the other benefits that go with owning real estate during that time. So I always tell people, don't convince yourself that doing nothing is free. It has a cost. Right. But in terms of analyzing the properties, let me get to that. Okay. Absolutely. I have boiled it down to what I call my 5 simple formulas. We don't have time to get into them here today, but you can find a direct link to the page on my site where I've broken them down at 5simpleformulas.com. And that's spelled out FIVE, simpleformulas.com. Okay.
I'm going to jot that down here real quick so I remember that.
And I'll send you the link for the show notes or whatever as well.
Okay. Well, what's interesting is, I've said this before, and I don't want to alienate any agents out there listening, but I've been doing this since January of 1986. So that would be going on 36 years this January. Well, my first house, four-bedroom ranch, rented out the other 2 rooms. And my college roommate's named Socrates, by the way. It was his dad. His father was a Greek immigrant. And he taught Sock and I how to buy that first house. And this was January 86, where interest rates were still through the roof. And
I thought you meant the real Socrates there for a minute. I'm like, Gary, you're not that old.
Yeah, not that old. He's I'm not sure about that Sock, but this Sock, we had a great history in college, probably some things I shouldn't talk about. But we, I remember his dad telling us, we were going to go out and rent. We're going to be roommates again. He said, don't do that. He said, you're not going to rent, you're going to buy. You're going to buy a house you're going to make money on. And to this day, that was one of the pivotal points in my life, that experience. So going forward, what I learned was most realtors just have one way of buying properties. It's traditional. You put down your 20%, you get a mortgage rate 8%, and the rest is history. There are so many ways you can structure deals. Interest rates are unbelievably low right now. I mean, as low as since I'm born in 63, rates haven't been this low since the 60s. And in fact, they've even been lower in the last couple of years. So, private money is less expensive now than it has been historically speaking. You could do rent participation mortgages where let's say you buy a place and the rents are low. And the owners got the Clampett syndrome, where they think, we don't care, we know it's worth 10 times what you think it is. So what you can do is say, look, let's both put our money where our mouths are. I'm going to buy it based on the valuation today, based on the income it's producing today. But I'm willing to share with you in the future profits. So as we increase rents for the next so many years, we will give you back a portion of those net increases, right? So that you get to participate in what you didn't do yourself. as a show of good faith. And of course, we get the ownership and we benefit long term. And things like that, people just don't normally think of. And if you think about it, who the heck wouldn't say yes to that? It's a win-win for everybody, you know? That's just one example. But nonetheless, you know, when you work with someone like Jeff, guys, you know, he has the methods, he has the tools. You know, don't fool around. I'm a broker myself. I'm not knocking all the other agents. I'm just telling you, they are typically not trained to work with you and I when it comes to these investment deals. You need somebody like Jeff who's done it himself. He knows what to do, and he also manages. So we got probably a few more minutes, Jeff, here. If we could talk about management, I know a lot of people choose management because they're just physically not there. And other people chose a manager because they tried it themselves and they got a lot of gray hair as a result and probably made mistakes. But what would you say are like the one or two or three key things in management that ends up resulting in success for the owner? I mean, there's lots of things, but there's probably some keys to every owner should know that you're doing on their behalf to make sure they're successful, you know?
Yeah. First of all, I think you mentioned this earlier that, you know, having acquisition and management under the same roof is such a tremendous benefit. And a lot of people don't understand why. But the way I explain it is if I'm your broker and we're helping you buy a property and I'm also going to manage this property, the last thing I'm going to do is sell you a headache, because guess whose headache it becomes the day after closing? Mine. And so what that does is it forces us to really align our goals with our investor clients. We want to find you a property that's going to be a success. It's going to perform well. It's not going to be a headache. It's going to, you know, the tenants are going to pay the rent. Things are just going to click. Now, that's not to say we can't help you find a value add and improve it. But the last thing I want to do is sell you a Class D property in a war zone that's going to be a headache just to get that one-time commission check, because it becomes my headache after closing. And I've learned over the years that I can manage 100 Class A rentals for the amount of time and resources it takes to manage one problematic Class D property where we're dealing with collection and eviction issues and maintenance issues. And the list just goes on and on and on. You can easily spend an entire week on one problematic property. What we want is, and what you want as the investor, is the properties that are relatively easy to manage. And of course, that doesn't mean there are never problems. That's what we're here for. And I think that's the second piece of the puzzle. When you hire a property manager, you're not just hiring me. You're not hiring a person. You're hiring a system of systems. And it has taken me literally years, and I know you know this, Gary, to invest in the right software, the right tools, the right team, the right staff, to effectively manage these 300 plus rentals. You can't just step in and do that without some growing pains. And so if you're a real estate investor, what having a good property manager allows you to do is make your investing scalable. You know, you might be able to manage, one or two rentals or 3 or 4 rentals on your own, but you can't manage 30 or 40. Hey, Gary, I'm sorry. Can we pause for a second? Somebody's ringing my bell, and I think it's the FedEx man. Are you able to edit? So as a real estate investor, especially as an investor investing in another market where you don't live, what having a good property management team in place allows you to do is it allows you to be scalable. You might be able to manage 1 or 2 units on your own. You might be able to manage 5 or 10 units on your own, self-managing. But at some point, you're going to hit a ceiling. You don't have enough time and not enough hours in the day, not enough days in the week to manage more than whatever that ceiling is for you. And I'm a big believer in the fact that if you can manage 8 units self-managing and that's your ceiling, well, why not hire somebody else to manage those properties and build your portfolio up to 80 units or 800 units? You know, if you look at that over the long term, it's a game changer. You have to think in terms of scalability, and a property management company or property management team is what allows you to scale.
Yeah, 100%. And everybody listening, the moral of the story is I know a lot of us are entrepreneurs and we run our own businesses, and we're always looking to play offense, which is score points, and defense, which is keep the points on the board. So people who play defense, which is manage their own properties, ultimately you may grow a little bit, but you're going to reach a point where you can't grow anymore with that model. And the bigger picture is you will make far more money as an investor than you ever will as a manager. A manager is something you can pay hourly for. And if you're listening to this and sincere about it, you know you're worth more than an hourly employee. You're the innovator. You're the creator. You're the one who's actually having the vision to make this portfolio grow. Okay, so let the manager be the manager. Let them do what they're good at, and let you be the grower of your own portfolio. And as a partnership, that manager will get your vision and help you, acquire and manage property, the right property. So I can't say enough about that, and I'm living proof because I did it myself. When I first started, I did it myself.
Like they say, work on your business. You don't have to work in your business. And that shift in mindset, and I hear that word come up all the time, mindset. You have to shift to thinking in terms of long-term, financial independence, cash flow, passive cash flow. It's the name of the podcast, right? Massive passive cash flow. So you have to shift your thinking in order to get there. And you have to shift away from thinking, I've got to, like you said, play defense. I've got to manage my property because I'm going to save 8%. Well, that 8% is not saving you anything if it's holding you back from getting from 8 or 10 units to 80 or 100 units. Because if you look at those two investors, the guy who owns 8 unit and self-manages, the guy who owns 100 units and pays a property manager, who's more wealthy in the long term? And that's a pretty easy analysis.
You got it. Yep. Well, I tell you what, this has been an awesome podcast. For everybody listening, boy, I hope you listen to this one again and take some notes. I mean, obviously, Jeff and I are very closely related. In fact, we were talking about this before. We think we may actually be related.
Long lost cousins.
Unbelievable. Same part of the country, same name. I mean, my name's Wilson, of course, but in the family, Copeland is in there. Same. So, in any case, we're definitely brothers from another mother. And everything Jeff is saying, guys, you've heard of me enough. You know that this is the real deal. If you're looking to invest in Tampa, and you should be, Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater, that whole area there has been growing like crazy for a really good reason, because it's a great place to be and everybody knows it. So get a piece of your pie. The worst thing you can do is wait a little, look back and say, gee, I wish I'd have started. How many people do you think are saying that now? I wish I'd have done this 3 and 5 years ago. Well, today's the best time to plant the tree, right? Do it now. And then 5-10 years later, you'll be saying, I'm so glad I did that,
Absolutely. Time heals all wounds, and it covers all mistakes in real estate. If you're a long-term buy and hold investor, buy right. I'm not saying buy a poor performing property, but if you buy a solid base hit property that's cash flow positive and you hold it for 10, 20, 30 years, real estate is probably the safest investment out there, and it's almost impossible, to go wrong.
You got it. So, well, let's do this. I want to give them a couple of links, Jeff, you and I. So I've got the multifamilyguide.com, and it's great content in there, guys. And then also the 5 simple formulas. Is that right?
Yeah, those are great links to get directly to some resources, but probably the easiest way to find me is just go to copelandmorgan.com. That's COPELANDMORGAN.com. From there, you can find links to our podcast, our educational resources, and my contact info, just about anything you need to find. That's kind of our central hub.
Excellent. Okay, well, listen, this has been fantastic. I want to thank you again, Jeff. Again, I know you're super successful, so I know how lucky we are. And I think everybody listening feels the same way. And for listeners, take Jeff up on that. Go to copelandmorgan.com, okay? And while you're on the internet, go back and visit realestatewithgarywilson.com and go into the members area for free. You click on member, left-hand side if you are a member, right-hand side if you're not. Go into the right-hand side if you're not. Go in for 30 days. They'll give you 30 days. Grab all you can get, okay, including this podcast. So when you listen to this, if you could do Jeff and I a favor, please leave a review. It's one of the biggest things you can do to help the cause. We collaborate, we cooperate with each other. That's how you succeed in this business, and doing your part it helps also. So in the meantime, God bless you and your families, and we'll see you on the next podcast.
Thanks again, Gary.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Massive Passive Cash Flow. Be sure to go to realestatewithgarywilson.com to join our community and start building wealth today.